which they appear in tests and interviews, and I started solving them. And it was very hard at first because I could barely do the medium level problems. So I would just refer to the forums or the solutions and learn about the algorithm properly, and then try to code it up myself. And slowly but surely, I eventually got better at it. And just a suggestion, not a requirement, I bought LeetCode Premium because it helps you stratify based on how frequently a particular company is giving that particular question or similar questions to that. So every time I had to prepare for like a company test, I would just stratify the questions by that company's frequency and prepare those because I didn't have time to prepare the entire resource. I would just go through like 20 or some. So that also helped me quite a bit. So all throughout the summer, I just kept practicing coding, and eventually I got shortlisted in Microsoft, Goldman, Amex, and Uber. Uh, in addition to that, I also put quite a bit of an effort into my CV preparation. And let's be honest, most of our CVs look very similar. Everyone has like one or two projects of Call 106 that we just put in our CV. So, one thing that I would like to advise you in regards to CV making is that try to follow a good conversational structure when describing your projects or past internships. So for every point, every project or something, you have to write 2 points, right? So for the first point, try to write what your goal was and what you did. And for the second one, describe what were the techniques and tools that you used. So in the first point, where by describing what you wanted to do and what you achieved, you are going to give the reader a high-level overview of your project. And via the second point, you're going to explain how you accomplished that. So don't just bore people by giving them too many technical terms in the first point itself. First, you garner their interest, and then you explain what you did. And then the last advice that I have is during your interview, once you get shortlisted, try to be as proactive and comfortable with yourself as possible. Everyone who gets shortlisted has good CVs and performed well on the coding tests. So now the company is essentially going to be looking for people who have good soft skills because they eventually want to hire people who are good potential teammates and not just machines, right? So before your interview, like an hour before your interview or at least the night before, just write 2 3 lines about yourself. Like if you have to introduce yourself, how can you make yourself look interesting, and then 2 3 non-generic questions that you might be able to ask the interview. If they ask you, do you have any questions for me, then you should be able to ask them a couple of interesting questions, so that when your technical evaluation is complete, once they've asked you about your any coding problem or any project description or anything, just relax and follow the script that you've written, and you'll be fine. So that's how I prepared for my internships, and that's the method that I would encourage you to follow. So that was all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kushi, for your insights. Now I'd like to call Navya. Uh, Navya, are you there? Like,
Navya just texted me that she's in the cab right now, so she'll be
oh,
back home
okay,
any in 10 minutes or something. So perhaps you could
okay,
just go
yeah,
to it later.
cool. So probably Manya can take over with this. Hi, Manya. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible? Okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
you are.
so I'm Manya Agarwal and I am from Electrical Engineering, Power and Automation, and I am interning with JP Morgan in the quantitative research. That's what my role says. And about my internship, I'm doing my intern in the market risk quantitative research team. It is basically the market, like how the different scenes, ups and downs in markets affect the shop prices and all. It sounds interesting, and it is. My part is mostly on the coding part, but there's also data analysis part, depending on the role you get in the team. And it's not very, I'll say, hard and fast rule how you get in. Like it's mostly on like I don't know how they sort you into teams, but yeah, you can switch between projects. Like the projects are very interesting. Yeah. Coming to my internship experience, so yeah, I know what you all must be going through right now. A lot of companies, you have to prepare your CV and then test and then interviews, definitely. So I'll start with the CV preparation thing. For the analytics, like what everyone suggested me for CV was to focus on my projects and previous internships, if any, like research internship. I did not have any research internship in my second year because I'm not too much into research. So that worried me a bit, to be honest, that I don't have any internship to write. But honestly, it did not matter at all. My research internship was not a barrier for me to get a third year internship. So if you didn't have any research internship in the second year, so don't worry. Just write about your projects as Khushi previously mentioned, and be short and crisp, and just explain what you did and the results. And if you got some results, I'll suggest do highlight the results because that is an important thing to do. And your CV should be all-rounder as well. So try mentioning some PORs or extracurricular activities that you have or had done. But and also focus on your scholastic achievements as well a bit. Like the two main portions in analytics CVs that people see are mainly the projects that you have done, obviously. So call 106, generally people write that and call 100 and stuff. And then yeah, scholastic achievements as well, and PORs and ECAs. If not too much, then just mention so to us such show that it's an all-rounder CV. Then coming to the interview preparation. So for analytics, I'll suggest you two things. First is coding, obviously. For coding, I personally preferred lead code because I like the UI of lead code, and hacker rank. I not like yeah lead code and code chef as well, but I didn't like that too much. For lead code, I started out with easy problems because yeah, seeing the medium problems was very overwhelming. But eventually, like it depends on how you want to proceed. Like for me, it was topic wise. Selected a topic, I did some easy problems, and then when I was comfortable with the topic, I moved on to the medium problems. But for people, I kept switching between two modes. Another was I just randomly tried out some problems on based on the topics, like shuffle topics, and then moved to the medium problems. So if I get bored with one method, switch to the other, to keep things interesting because coding can sometimes be boring. And secondly, from my experience, I like to say that do not restrict yourself for the time period that okay, I'll give 1 hour or 2 hours of code my whole day into coding. For me, what worked best was the number of problems that I did. Like I had a goal of doing this much problems in a day, and if I've achieved that, then it was good. If I wanted to do more, I could. But the number of problems deciding helped me because some problems will take up a lot of your time. Not kidding, like maybe half an hour as well. So don't get worried or don't think that it is not possible because that will happen and that's how you'll prepare. And if you stuck on a problem, refer to the solutions, not solutions, the comment section. That is very helpful. Don't look into the solution in the first go. Maybe just try and look some hints and that might help you guys ahead also. And yeah, for me, I never went to the hard problems because to be honest, for me, medium was even very overwhelming, but if you guys can go, then that's really good. And secondly, I'll suggest you guys to do brainstormer problems for the and puzzles part, MTL 106. If you have the guys done that, that's good. Otherwise, have some basics in probability, I'll say. Otherwise, do brainstormer for sure. Like I had two shortlists in the analytics company, JP Morgan as well as Goldman Sachs. And in both the interviews, the interviewers asked me all the questions were from Brainsteller, medium level. So there are three levels: easy, medium, hard. Easy level, I wasn't able to solve myself. Let's be honest there. So I just looked at the solutions, and honestly, if you are not able to solve any questions of easy, medium, or hard, don't worry. Just look at the solutions because at last, what matters is they literally ask you the same questions. They didn't even care to change the values. So at last, what matters is that you know the concept and you are able to walk through the interview with what your thoughts. So start with easy, do medium, and maybe hard. Just go over through the questions and the concepts if you can. That will be really helpful for interview. And coming to the interview, yeah, as Kushi said, just prepare some 2-3 lines about your for your introduction and try not to include the points that you have already written in CV because if interviewer is interested in the projects that you have done, he'll come to the point at last in the last round, like in 10 minutes, last 10 minutes, that he'll discuss your CV with you. So maybe try to include some things that you could not include in your CV. That also shows how like your maybe your interest in analytics or maybe your leadership qualities, something basically that highlights about yourself is good. And prepare one or two questions at least for the company, because that is something that everyone asks. And maybe if you don't have any questions for them beforehand, then you can even ask like, what do you do in the company and what role can I expect? And so, like it can be as generic as possible, or maybe if you are really interested to know anything about the company, then why not ask them? They'll like that. So I think I've covered most of it, and I hope I haven't taken a lot of time. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Manya, for sharing your experience. But meantime, you can put your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll take up those questions. Um, now I'd like to call Sarthak to share his experience. Over to you, Sarthak.
Hi everyone. Before we get into what I do at American Express and how I got into it, just a background, I'm not good at coding. I'm probably the worst coder out of all people that are speaking today. But like I never did com coding. I don't like it. I don't want to learn it. I don't want to do it. But a lot of analytics at the end of the day comes to how good you are at quant, and you can always make up for not having like the best coding skills if you're too good at quant. In fact, a lot of tests for analytics companies, you can actually leave the coding section if you're able to do that well in the quant part. And American Express luckily gave me a choice of, picking. There's a section of quant, like a comprehensive section with a lot of quant questions. And then you have a choice between doing a case study or ML related problem, like a case study on your screen, which I picked. And it's very logical. It's not as hard as like a consult wali case study. So you can always like get away with not being that good of a coder. Coming to what I do, I am in the internal data science team in the credit and fraud risk division of American Express. So basically, for every credit card, for every transaction, there's an entire model that runs on the back end. That calculates like a score for every time you swipe a card, and if that score is over a threshold, only then is your transaction is approved, and if it's below it, then it's declined. Um, so coming back to the test, so quant, I think for me, I never did MTL 106 or MTL 108, but the questions that come in quant aren't necessarily that hard. Like everyone in this meeting would be able to solve them, but not as quickly as you would want to in a test or in an interview. And it's a lot more about thinking out loud when you're in the interview. So there's a couple of resources like uh, there's there's a book 50 challenging problems in probability, that's really good. Then Heard on the Street is really good, and for puzzles you can obviously go to Brainsteller, as people previously may have mentioned. uh, Coming to the CV, for analytics, test obviously supersedes the CV, so you can always make up for not having the best CV out there by doing really well in the test. But like obviously a good CGPA 8.5 or a 9 does give you an edge, and provide you with an edge to be shortlisted. Uh, PORs, I don't think they matter as much for analytics, but again, if you don't have any other edge, obviously a good POR would matter. Previous internships, yeah, obviously, if you have an internship that aligns with what you're planning to do in an analytics, for instance, if you have something in data modeling or something like that, that's really good. I didn't, but I did have an intern in like Columbia Business School, so I think that really boded really well for me to get shortlisted, and my interviewer like spent a good amount of time talking about it. Uh, Coming to the interview process, uh, like I did not have any internship that aligned with what I planned to do in the internship itself. So my interview had four parts majorly. It was quant, puzzles, my CV, and HR questions. Coming to quant, uh, they don't necessarily expect you to come to the right solution right away. So I would recommend whenever you're practicing questions related to quant, practice thinking out loud as well. So don't just try to come to the right answer. Also, while attempting it, talk out loud of what your thought process is. So whenever you're asked a question, ask for a couple of minutes, think of a structure in your mind, and then talk the interview through the process. To be honest, I wasn't able to solve either of my questions in the second round, but he did guide me well, and he was very impressed with the way I thought, because the questions might be too hard in like when you are asked when you are asked those questions. So they what they really care about is your thought process. For puzzles, again, brain stellar, I think is more than enough. But it's again more about your thought process and being able to present your thought process in a structured manner than coming to the right answer right away. For the CV, I mean, everyone does it, and so will you. You will fancify your CV. You will paraphrase some things to make it look a bit more fancy, to make it look like you've done things, better than you actually did them. But make sure whatever you put in your CV, you're able to defend it well in the interview, because they will keep digging. So anything that you've put in your CV, just make sure you're able to defend it. You know everything about it. You know what you have done. You know what you have achieved. And in that CV, maybe you can quantify your results with numbers, and like there's a bunch of ways to do it. But make sure there are quantifiable results that are, achievements that you've made in that CV. And the fourth was HR. HR, again, as Mana and Kushi have mentioned, it's majorly it's about introducing yourself and why do you want to work in analytics? Why do you want to work in that specific company? So make sure this goes for every company, not just analytics that you would be shortlisted for. Just make sure that you have a story in your head built that leads to you being sort of like perfect for that role. You don't necessarily have to be perfect for that role. I didn't specifically prepare for analytics, but when you're in that interview, you have to present it in a way that your entire story, uh, you know, boils down to you being, you really wanting to come to analytics, and you also being the perfect candidate for analytics. I think that's pretty much it. If there are any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the session.
Thank you, Sarthak. Now we'll shift to Navya for listening to her experiences. Over to Navya.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, you are.
I am sorry, I was actually in the cab, so yeah. I think they have all covered pretty much everything. So I'll just touch upon the other things that are left. So for the CV, I had basically four sections in my CV: the scholastic achievements, the internships, the projects, the technical skills, and the extracurricular. So I'm from chemical engineering department, and as you all might know, that not a lot of tech and analytics company open for us. And so, like, I really wanted to be in the coding side. So, analytics was something that I had preferred. But then there was this constant fear that I'm from a chemical engineering department and that might be a bias to them. But honestly, I assure you that's not really a bias to them. It's what your skills are and what projects you have done. Apart from that, I had an internship. I had a research internship at Monash University, which was something related to ML, image segmentation. So that was it. And I had a few projects from call 106, call 100, and a few from my course project of like for the ones who are from chemical engineering, you might know there's this 113 course. So you might put your report, your project that you've done in that, because that's a numerical methods course. So you can put that as well. More importantly, it's important that how you present your project. So use action words and just focus on what the result has an impact on the industry. So, like for example, if you've done something, focus not more on how you have done it, but what impact does that project bring on the thing that you are trying to do. Apart from that, I think quant side, there was this book, Practical Guide to Quantitative Finance Interviews. So that was something that I followed, the chapter 2, 4, and 5 of that book. That's like a really nice book for starting with. And apart from that, MTL 106. Um, and for the coding section, you can maybe refer to Lead Code, the easy and medium questions from Lead Code, and interview bit as well. So I think that's pretty much it what I did. And for the interview process, I had two rounds. I had one in which I was asked basic questions of probability, which were direct from Brain Cellar. And the other round was more based on what the internship I did. So it's important that what you put in your CV, you know exactly what you have done. So that's about it, I guess. Maybe we can move to the Q&A.
Yeah, sure. So we have some of the questions in the Q&A. First question is, how frequently are questions based on stochastic processes that are asked? Am I
I
audible?
think sarcastic processes are never asked in interviews, as far as I know. They ask for probability related questions, but
Yeah.
not for anything related to stochastic processes.
And
Okay,
even in
so next
probability,
question. Yeah.
yeah, in probability, most of the questions are in the interview test. Like in the interview, the questions are not too hard. In the test, they might be like probability, proper solving questions sometimes.
Just one more thing. There are questions about random walks from in the quant section. So that might use the stochastic. So that might have the application of stochastic, but not a direct question is asked from it as well.
Um, we have one of the question for Sarthak. Uh, what kind of quant questions were there in the AMEX, American Express test?
They were very basic probability and quant stuff. Like you don't have to worry too much about what all you have to cover. I guess just these couple of books that I've mentioned and prep leave. Prep leave is provided by OCS during the internship process. Go through all of them. You'll be able to do all quant stuff. But the test overall has three sections: quant, then you get a choice, then case study, and then you get a choice. If you want to attempt MLK questions, you can. You'll get some extra time. If you don't want to, you don't have to. I didn't.
Uh, we have next question for Manya. How many questions, around how many questions did you solve at lead code for the coding test?
That kind of is embarrassing. Like, I had a plan to solve like 10 questions of easy and five or something around questions for medium daily, but obviously I didn't achieve that. So I'll say like around for 2 months it was like 100 questions at max, both easy and medium. That is that it wasn't less because yeah, okay, that was less for sure. But I'll
There's one
say
more.
number of questions does not matter. Like number of questions matter, but what matter was the concepts that I was understanding through the questions.
There's one more question. What level of coding comes in analytics, and how is it different from those in tech companies?
Maybe
Um,
I can take this one. So for the Goldman Sachs test, basically we had two coding questions. One was a very easy level, and the other you can say it was a medium level question. But the IT companies have more the hard and medium problems.
And if I may just extend this further based on how much coding you will actually do on the job. So usually analytics company would, when they hire engineers, they hire for two roles usually, quant or tech. Usually from IITs, they mostly hire from quant and not tech. So you will not spend a lot of time developing platforms or developing products. Instead, someone has developed a product. You will spend your time reading the code, analyzing it, seeing if there are any caveats, or seeing how you can optimize it or improve it further. So there will be a lot of reading code involved or studying about the code as compared to actually writing code. So, and there'll be a lot more optimization involved or seeing that if there's anything behind the scenes in the compiler level or anything that you can improve to make the product just better and better. So basically, you're just going to be analyzing stuff in an analytics profile.
Okay. So thank you. We have one more question. Like, if a person doesn't have a single call project, that what are the things that can help them in their CV? The points.
I guess like call 100 projects might be there. That is something you can put. Apart from that, you can put in self projects as well that you might have done, like the Coursera projects that you might have done, but it's not necessary. It has to be a course project. It can be anything that you have done on your own. So that's it.
There's one more question. Is there CV shortlisting on the basis of CG in analytics companies?
Not really. CG is important, definitely, but they'll do a more holistic overview of what your CV is and combine that with your performance on the tests, and then they will shortlist you. So even if you have a not very good CG, like if you aren't a nine pointer or anything, it is not the end of the world. Like you can still prepare to do good on tests, and if you have otherwise a really good CV, like if you have really good projects or a pretty good intern or a previous intern or stuff, then you have a very, very good chance of getting shortlisted in spite of your CG.
There's one question for Sarthak. There is Quant for analytics and there is Quant for HFTs. How much difference is there in this?
Uh, I think the quant for HFTs is a bit tougher, I would say, but not that much different. I didn't really prepare for HFTs, so I wouldn't know much about it. But the quant for analytics is not, I won't say the theoretical part is too hard. You'll just have to practice a few questions and I think you'll be good.
Uh, there's one more question. Like from which of the topics most of the questions are asked in coding tests?
Dynamic programming. Lots and lots of questions
Like,
just abide by dynamic
and data
is
structure
what I
and
know.
algorithms, DSA, like AVL tree, binary trees, yeah, dictionaries, nested, yeah, and obviously some basics about like basics you should know because they help in to fast and for better implementation of the code.
Uh, there's one more question. Like, should we include the research internships in analytics CV even if they aren't even relevant for the profile?
I'll
Go
take this
for it.
one. Yeah, I think you should add it because I mean, apart from being skilled already for what you're supposed to do, it also matters what kind of achievements you've made previously. So, for instance, I didn't have anything relevant to analytics if I'm being completely honest in my CV, but still they really digged into my CV because they want to understand what kind of person I am and what kind of work I've done before. Because summer internship is mostly about learning new things that they'll teach you. They just want to make sure that you'll be learning well.
There's a question. What's difference between data science, data analytics, and business analytics?
Again, if there's someone else, then um, I data science is a lot more technical than data analytics, I would say. So you can't really compare the two. Business analytics and data analytics are a lot of times used synonymously, but data science is a completely different thing. I mean, it's a lot more about modeling and stuff like that, while data analytics is you you're understanding a business problem and how the back end of things work, and then coming up with like a new idea. It's not very hard to implement technically, so it's more about your own analysis, but data science on the other hand is a lot more technical.
There's a question. Are there questions on graph algorithms in the coding tests?
I did not find any graph questions in the for the analytics company, but that does not mean there might not be like there is not too much hard questions if there are, but I don't think I faced any.
I think so. If my memory serves me right, Goldman, we have like two sections of coding, as Navya said. And in one of the sections, I think there was a graph related question. Um, Something about a robber is moving at 2x speed, but in one direction, and a policeman is moving in 1x speed, but in all directions, or something like that. So I think that was there, and I think I wasn't able to solve it. So there was that. So don't ignore graphs; they're important.
Uh, should one learn SQL for analytics or not?
No, I don't think so that's necessary. So, like, it depends a lot on what profile you get in when you get into an analytics company and what language they want you to use. So, for me, right now, the role I am doing, I have to learn a very new language which is native to Goldman Sachs. So, it isn't like you can learn everything and go there. Just be open to the opportunities that you get. You'll have ample amount of time to learn there as well.
Um, is statistics important or asked in the interviews?
Manya, you wanna take this? Relevance with brain stellar and problems.
Statistics, I'm not very sure if I remember that part. But no, I don't. I didn't prepare specifically anything related to that part. If I, yeah, that's what I remember.
There's one question for Sarthik. Can you please recommend any book for quant questions?
Um, the books that I used were 50 challenging questions on probability and Heard on the Street. And apart from that, I did try out the Preply wala access that OCS gives, though I wasn't able to get through it much.
Okay, if there are any more questions, you can put in the chat box. This one question: is it important to have a CG above 8.5 to get analytics?
No, it's not a hard and fast route to have a CGPA of 8.5 plus. I have friends with CG less than 8.5 who are in analytics now. And as previously mentioned, if you have a good CV and or if you are good, like you have done well in your test, then CG does not matter that much if you are good at what you're doing.
So there's one question: what kind of work are you people doing during the internship? I guess Sarthik has already answered what he's doing. Probably you can take over issue or one.
So as I mentioned, I work in the Goldman Sachs electronic trading department. So my team has developed a trading platform. Now, before we give this platform to our clients to execute their trades on, um, it's going to be very important to minimize latency as much as possible, because even like 1 microsecond difference or delays in trades, if you're conducting like 1 million trades at this particular bid order book, can lead to a lot of losses or such, which means less commission for Goldman Sachs. So what we want to do is make sure our platform is as optimized as possible and there are no bottlenecks whatsoever. So at the moment, I am reading about or working on how much optimization is being done on the code via the compiler without any human intervention. So my team does not know about what is happening in JIT compilation for Java. So what I am doing is learning about what processes are being inlined and what processes are being compiled into native code and what processes are being Java interpreted. This is all very technical, so I'm pretty sure none of you are really going to pay attention to what this is. But essentially, I am doing no coding. I am just reading a lot and a lot and a lot of code and trying to make sense of it and make sure it's not bad code, like it's not taking up too much CPU or resources or taking up too much memory, and making sure that it's running as efficiently as possible before we execute it into production.
Thank you, Kushi. There's another question. How much machine learning or Python is required in business analytics?
For business analytics, I don't think it's that necessary, because business analytics is not so much about the technical stuff, but more about, like, again, your own analysis. So I mean, because McKinsey takes business analytics analysts from IIT Delhi, so I mean, I know for a fact that it's not a technical role at all.
Okay, thank you. So we don't have any more questions in the chat box left. Thank you to all the panelists for sharing so much insightful information about your internship experiences. And it was really nice to have you all in this workshop. Have a good day. Thank you.
Best of luck, guys.
All the
All
best.
the
Thanks,
Feel
best.
Chinmay.
free to reach
Yeah.
to us if you
Thank
have
you.
any doubts.